Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for yet another exciting, educative edition of HR Mentorship Learning Series tonight. It is my privilege, pleasure, and honor to have for the second time Coach Sarah Wachuku. She will be facilitating on a very interesting topic, hiring in the 21st century organization, best practice approach. I can tell you categorically that tonight is going to be a masterclass. So in the next 30 seconds to 1 minute, reach out to your colleague at work, reach out to that HR friend of yours that they need to join this class. I promise you will have a very fulfilled time. Ladies and gentlemen, even though Coach Sarah Wachuku needs little or no introduction, but I would still like to read very briefly about her. Sarah is a highly experienced human resource professional with experience cutting various industries that include public service, manufacturing, education, transportation, and renewable energy. She is currently the head of training and facilities at Lumos Nigeria, also Texlite Power Solutions Limited. She holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in Business Administration from the prestigious University of Illinois. They call themselves today Better by Far. She also has a master's in business admin from banking and finance from Abia State University. In addition to this, she has a master's of science in industrial relations and personnel management from the University of Lagos, the Lagunfront University. She's a member of the Chara Institute of Personnel Management, and she is a certified coach. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Coach Sarah as she takes over. Thank you so much for joining again tonight.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Oluyemi, Council Member, CIPM Nigeria. I am highly honored and delighted to be sharing this topic, to be facilitating this topic, hiring in the 21st century organization, best practice approach. Yes, I want to welcome everyone on this call, and I thank you for joining. I pray that our time together shall be fruitful. So let's start. Okay, the outline is voluminous. I'm going to run through it. We'll start with an introduction, consequences of hiring mistakes. Hiring right is pivotal for 21st century organizations, the common causes of bad hires, how we make poor quality judgments, hiring goals, how to do a great job hiring, preparing to hire, the hiring process, key considerations, hiring, main process flowcharts, job description, personnel specification, the scorecard, advertising sources, a thought about social media and hiring, the application process, shortlisting, selection methods, the interview purpose, interview principles, how to prepare for an interview, types of interviews, types of structured interviews, the interview, type of questions, interview, avoid legal troubles, completion of the interview assessment forms, making your decision, assessing the candidate's desire factor, the appointment letter or the offer, other potential issues, the holistic candidate experience. So let's start. But before I start, I would like to find out whether all of us here have been involved in hiring in our career. Have we at any time hired anybody in our organization? Have we hired?
There are multiple responses in the chat box saying yes, ma, yes, yes.
Okay. Now, we have all hired. My question now is, I want to ask, as part of this process, before you started hiring, were you ever given rigorous training on how to hire? Have you ever gone for a training on how to hire before you started hiring? I'm not seeing the chat box.
They are saying, some people are saying no, not at all. People are responding, I'm seeing them here.
Oh, I don't know, I'm not seeing the chat box, but let me continue. Okay, now, I hope the people that say no, they are much more than the people that said yes. Is that correct?
Yes, then somebody said theoretical knowledge from the CIPM curriculum.
Okay, thank you. Now we have seen that it's very important for us to get hiring right. But many of us just started hiring without going for any training. That it is crucial for us to get the hiring right. And you cannot give what you don't have. So if you've not been trained on how to hire, it will be difficult for you to know how to hire. So I enjoyed every one of us to participate fully in this webinar. Though I'm facilitating, I would like everybody to be contributing maybe their little knowledge. So let me start. By way of introduction, every organization is facing the pains of the global economic downturn. So if there is a time for companies to become more thoughtful about the people they hire into the organization, how they develop and retain them, is now. In this webinar, we are going to be focusing more on the hiring aspect because honestly speaking, if you get the hiring wrong, the rest does not matter because you end up developing and retaining those wrong hires that you have gotten into your organization. Whereas if you get the hiring right, every other thing starts falling in place. Jim Collins, in his book, Good to Great, popularized the notion. Do we know Jim Collins? Have you read that book, Good to Great? Are there people that have read the book Good to Great? Well, in his book, Good to Great, he popularized the notion that the most important decisions people make in business are not what decisions, but who decisions. Who you hire can make or mar your organization. Who you hire makes the difference in your organization. Have we heard of the notion, you are what you eat? In business, you are who you hire. According to Dr. Joel Smart, our goals in hiring should be to have the right who, in the right where, doing the right work to enable us build a viable and sustainable organization. So for us to be able to build our organization into a sustainable organization, we must ensure that who we bring in, they are the right people. Let's move on. The consequences. The consequences of bad hire. My screen is covered. The consequences of hiring mistakes. Research by Peter Drucker, the famous management guru, and other researchers across the century suggest that managers make hiring mistakes about 50% of the time. So 1 out of every 2 people we hire are mistakes. So this has become the #1 problem for organizations in the 21st century. And what is scary is the cost of this hiring mistake. Research has shown that the average cost of hiring mistake is 15 times the person's annual salary. This comprises of both the hard and the soft cost. The hard cost that you've gotten that person higher than your person that you are paying that person's salary, and other things that comprise the hard cost. I didn't want to jam pack it. Then the soft cost, of the opportunities that person is moving, of the work that person is not getting done. Of you, maybe you are the one now trying to do that job, so you will not be enjoying your own time. You're trying to do the work for the person you have hired. You can do the calculation of the cost of back hire in your organization, but you find out that it is enormous. The economic strength for organization is quite huge. Our colleague, Joel Omeike, when we were sharing about the cost of recruitment, I think he said it is 200% of that person's salary. So we can see that the cost of making any hiring mistake, because once you have made that hiring mistake, you have to replace. And you now have to spend enormous cost to replace. We don't want that to be happening to us. We want to ensure that as we hire right. I'm moving on. Okay, we have seen the cost of hiring mistake. Let's look, so it is important that we hire right. So hiring right is pivotal to any organization operating in the 21st century. What I have here is that the topic of hiring is growing in popularity. The Wall Street Journal wrote about this topic, proclaiming it the most important aspect of business. Steve Jobs. Do we know Steve Jobs? Can I see on the chat box whether we know Steve Jobs? Okay, thank you. Let's continue. Steve Jobs said, "The secret of my success is that we have gone an exceptional length to make sure that we hire the best people in the world." And again, Laszlo Box, he was once the senior VP HR operations in Google. He says that the secret of Google's success is that they have always did a great job hiring people. We can see that hiring is very, very crucial for any organization to succeed in this 21st century. Furthermore, Jack Welch, the chair and CEO of General Electric, 1981 to 2001, and legendary American business person, spent over 50% of his time hiring. He was the person that turned General Electric's into a more viable organization. He spent 50% of his time hiring. This is because hiring is very, very crucial for the success of any organization in the 21st century. Hiring. Getting the best teams getting the best athletes into your team it is one thing that will lead the organization to success. Business is a game, it's a sport. And the team with the best athletes, they win the championship, they win the race, they win the game. So in order for you to succeed in this 21st century, you must ensure that you hire the best people ever, the best athletes. Moving on. Organizations are now beginning to realize that the foundation of their competitive strategy is the quality of their human capital. Having a top-notch, flexible, and innovative employee can be a more competitive advantage that will sustain your organization more than technological or marketing advantages. It's important then that employers take the necessary skill to ensure that they select the best candidate for the job based on merit and ability. These people will be able to develop and implement a wide range of strategy to respond quickly to the changing economic landscape. The business landscape is dynamic. We are operating in a VUCA world, a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. That is where we're operating. So you have to have people that can re-strategize at each point in time to sustain your organization. So having the right people is pivotal for the success of any organization that wants in this 21st century. Okay, I'm moving on. Now let's look at the causes of bad hires. What are the things that cause us to make bad hires? There are several. One, an unstructured process. An unstructured process is a pain to both the candidates and the hiring department. It puts a strain on your hiring department. So it causes bad hires. Again, we have using a one-size-fits-all selection process. We know that each job family, there is a unique combination of competencies and personality trait that can allow somebody to be productive on the job. But when you now use a one-size-fits-all process, it increasingly leads to bad hires. Furthermore, selecting candidates based on data, selecting candidates without data or collecting the wrong data. When you are using your gut feels, your snap judgment, your prejudices to select candidates, this will increasingly lead to bad hires. So let me move on. Furthermore, no focus on candidate experience. We're in the candidate world, and good candidates are hot cakes in the market. So if the candidate experience is not top-notch, you will be left with the leftovers. No good person will want to apply when you advertise. So if you don't have a top-notch, a good candidate experience, you will not be able to get your hiring right. Okay, you are sticking to manual labor. Now, when you advertise, are you still using manual labor to sift through the stack of resumes like me? That will not lead to an efficient system because you will be tired. Before you even check, let's say 50 or 100 resumes, you will be tired. So you will not be able to dig into the person's resume to find out whether they meet your criteria. So that's part of the causes of bad hires. Also, no training for hiring managers. We have all said it. We have been hiring, but we've not been trained. You can't give what you don't have. If you've not been trained on what to look for, what will you now look for? So no training can cause bad hiring. Then also we now have no practice, no preparation. All this will produce bad hires. Okay, moving on. Let's look at how we make bad quality judgments. Some of the unconscious biases that influence our ability to judge talents and make effective hiring decisions. Research has shown that even with the best of intentions, our brain conspires to make us make bad hiring. So we all have unconscious bias. There are several unconscious biases that affect our hiring that I have 4 here. 1, the first impression bias or first impression error. This happens, what happens here is our first initial snap judgment in an interview can set the tone and color the rest of the interview time. So no matter what the candidate said in the next hour or so, those first instincts can alter how the interviewer rates whatever the candidate says thereafter. Yes, we all fall victim of this bias. The first 2 seconds make or mar the interview. Most of us do that. But for you to be able to get your interview right, you have to stop that because some candidates, when they come in, they are nervous. they have not settled down. So you have to give candidates time to settle before you start judging them. Allow them to settle so that you can be able to now ask them the questions you want to ask them, so that you'll be able to dig deep and get the data you want to get. But once you have colored you've had that bias that has colored you from inception, you'll not be able to get a good candidate. Then secondly, I have the similar to me bias, in which we develop an affinity for a candidate because he or she shared personal characteristics with us. So instead of us focusing on the qualification of the job at hand, we instead focus on the shared schooling or shared background. Yes, we all have this bias. When we want to hire, we are looking for similar to me. This person finished from Unilag, great appetite. This person is from my tribe. Oh, no, I have to hire this person. Oh, we attend the same church. So we are all victims of this bias, but it shouldn't be so. We have to be objective. We are trying to get a standardized information to help us to make the hiring decision. So we should remove this similar to me bias. I nearly fell victim of this bias in a recent interview. When we were hiring, I saw a CV that the person is living in Satellite Town, and I live in Satellite Town. So though the person's CV was impressive, so I invited the person for interview. But after the interview, I had affinity to that person. I was saying, this person lives near me. I will see a person that will be going home together. I will see a person that I can visit, or all those things. But thank God for my team. They spotted it, that this person is not the best candidate for the job, and we went with another person. So we should always ensure that we don't have the similar, or we don't allow the similar to me bias to influence our judgment. Then we have the confirmation bias. The confirmation bias can occur when we seek information that reconfirms our pre-existing notion about the candidate. And this can lead to inconsistency in questioning when we treat different candidates and ask them different questions. For example, say team working is part of your interview criteria. It's part of the criteria you're using to select. Most of us believe that if a candidate has worked in a multinational organization, the candidate will be able to be a good team player. So instead of us to ask that, or those candidates from multinational organizations, about their ability to work as a team, instead of us to ask them, we will not ask them, we just presume and confirm that they are from a multinational, so they work well as a team. But people from a one-man organization, or organizations that are not well known, will keep hammering them question upon question about team working or any other criteria that we are using. No, this should not be so. Then finally, on this slide, I have the overconfidence bias. This occurs because we all think that we are better than average in judgment, better than average in intuition, and better than average in hiring. So we don't even question what we think when we make our judgment about a candidate. As I started, I said that we all have unconscious bias. And research has shown that even when you don't want to make that bias, your brain conspires to make you make that hiring bad hires. So we should try to eliminate every form of unconscious bias, from the first impression bias to the overconfidence bias. We should make our decisions based on data. There are several other biases. We have the halo and the horn effect. You can write some other biases that you know on the chat box. So let's move on. Now, what should be our goal in hiring? Ultimately, our goal in hiring should be to bring in the candidate that will perform well on the job. We have to have an accurate and fair selection system that must give us valid and reliable measures of the job applicant's characteristics. Now, we can now use these characteristics to produce a correct hire or no hire decision. But the ultimate aim, the ultimate goal of hiring should be to improve. The person we are hiring must be able to improve the overall effectiveness, productivity, and ultimate profitability of our organization. The person should be able to move our organization from where we are now to a higher place. So in our mind, we should ensure that we bring in people that will be able to strategize. We strategize to move our organization to higher level of profitability. So I'm moving on. Okay. So how can we now do a good job hiring? If we want to hire right, we should follow these steps that I have here. They are not in any particular order. The first and foremost here, I have a clear selection criteria upfront in terms of what you are looking for. You can call it a scorecard, a blueprint, a portrait, a picture of that person you are looking for. Then you will be selecting resumes or CVs that match to that criteria. So you have the criteria you're looking for. You are now sieving the CVs to find out those that match to that criteria. In my organization, we use cognitive ability, leadership, culture, motivation, ability to do the job. So when you are questioning the candidate, you will use this criteria to interview the candidate or to do your shortlisting. Then secondly, I have here, implement a well-structured, well-thought-out interview process. Use structured interview. We're trying to get validated data. So it's by structured interview where people are consistently asked the same type of question that can enable you get that right data. Again, I have here, define what good, bad, and mediocre results look like. Have a clear standard that you use to judge the candidate. Because some people are hard graders, some people are soft graders. Some people are tough interviewers, some people are easy interviewers. Some people are good at interviewing, some people are not good. But if before the interview you have met and you have agreed on the criteria, you have defined the criteria, know how to, what good looks like, what average looks like, what poor looks like, it will help you. So you will now be objective in your hiring. Then, again, set an incredible high bar for quality and never, ever compromise. I repeat, set an incredible bar for quality and never compromise. Because once you start compromising, you find out that the performance of your team will start going down. In my organization, we don't compromise on quality. And I hope most of us here on this call, I know we don't do it, but I'm just reminding us that we should continue. We should never compromise. In my organization, we don't compromise on quality. There was a time we were trying to hire and a candidate decided to go and apply through the CEO. Well, the CEO sent in this application, but when we assessed this application against our criteria, he did not meet our criteria. We didn't even shortlist him. We just informed the CEO that the candidate did not meet our criteria and it stopped there. So ensure that in your organization, you have set a high standard and you never compromise quality. I'm moving on. Now, do the training, do the preparation, As I said before, business is a sport. The best athletes, they don't just jump into the field on the day of the game and just start playing. They train and train and train and retrain. Usain Bolt, some of us may know him. He did not just start winning races into the field on that day. He took time training. So if you want to get the intel, if you want to hire right in this 21st century, you have to ensure that you train. Then, if you are not the one doing the interview, train your managers that are doing the interview. Again, I have the candidate experience. The candidate experience must be top-notch for you to get good candidates. I said before, if you don't give a top-notch candidate experience, you'll be left with the leftover. You'll be left with the leftover. Other people that have a top-notch candidate experience will get the good quality candidates. You will now be left with the leftover. No, we don't want that. So we should keep the candidate experience in mind throughout the hire process, because most people, when they apply, they are brand enthusiasts, one way ahead of being advocates or adversaries. We want people that will advocate for us. We don't want brand adversaries. So we should keep the candidate experience top-notch by giving feedback, by following up. Again, for you to have hiring rights, you're supposed to consider a wide range of applicants. Don't just go and pick 2 or 3 CVs. Get CV from your uncle, then you now select. No, advertise widely. Get a wide range of candidates, and from here, you can be able to select. Then, I also have take away power from hiring managers. Have a different group. You can call it a team, you can call it a panel or a committee, but ensure that the hiring manager does not have the sole say in whom to bring into the organization. In my organization, we have taken away powers from hiring manager. Now what we do is, after we have selected the 3 candidates and sent to the hiring manager, the hiring manager may look at maybe 2, but he will not make the decision on his own. Those 2 now will be sent to a different person that does not have anything to do with that candidate. That person will now select between the 2 and see the one that will fit into our organization. Now, companies like Google, they use a hiring committee, and that has led to their success. Google used a hiring committee, and it has led to their success. The hiring managers in Google, they don't have the final say. It is the hiring committee that have the final say in Google. As HR practitioners, we're supposed to be researching organizations, mostly best practice organizations, to know what is happening there. HR is not only practice, HR is research and practice. So try and research to know what is making best practice organizations to succeed in this 21st century. And finally on this, I have give the candidates a reason to join, sell your organization. Here we are talking about employer branding. We are talking about employer branding. What does it feel like to work in your organization? So we are all humans. We want similar things in life. We want meaning. We want happiness. We want freedom. So sell what is good in your organization. What are the things that the person will experience? What are the good things? What are the colleagues that person is coming to join? Sell that. Whatever good thing you have in your organization, try to sell that. Sell your organization. You are trying to brand your organization. One thing I want to leave or emphasize here is that we all want freedom. Nobody wants to be micromanaging. So if you or your managers that you support are micromanaging, train them not to micromanage. So when if the candidate comes in, the person will not feel frustrated because he's working under a manager that micromanages he or she. Note, The key to good interview will rely on your ability to avoid common hiring mistakes and assess potential candidates objectively. Objectivity is key. Standardization is key. Structured interview is key in any hiring in the 21st century for you to get it right. So I'm moving on. We have to prepare for hiring. Well, this thing is not good. Sorry, let me shift this thing. Okay. Hiring. Oh, no, sorry. Okay. Hiring. We have to prepare for hiring. So before you prepare, ensure that you have a recruitment and selection policy and procedure for the organization. Ensure that all employees, particularly those that are involved in hiring, know about it. These policies and procedure should be reviewed to accommodate the new best practices and any new legislation. And when you are reviewing it or when you are creating this policy, ensure you involve the union or any employee representative about their opinion. This will ensure transparency. Try to abandon every outdated policy. We are talking of the 21st century here. I'm moving on. Yes, before you hire, there are key things you have to consider. Develop and implement a systematic, fair and objective recruitment and selection procedure. This will reduce the possibility of unlawful discrimination and breach of legislation, particularly most of us that are practicing in the outside Nigeria, in most countries like the UK or the US. The candidate can take you to the tribunal anytime. So you have to ensure that you have a recruitment policy that ensures that there is no discrimination. This will now increase the likelihood that you get the best person for the job. Note, following a good, robust, and objective recruitment and selection procedure will help an organization to get the right person for the job. Okay, the hiring has a process flow chart. It starts with the vacancy occurring, then it flows down up to the appointment being made. So we are going to go through this one after the other. So I'm moving on. We will omit the vacancy occurring because we all know that vacancy has occurred before we start hiring. The job description. The job description. Note, for every post, you should try and draft a job description, or if you have one, try and review it. The job description describes the essential duties of the job. Role can change at any time due to changes in technology, changes in your process, or changes in legislation. So you have to review your job description periodically to accommodate anything. But before putting up the job description, carry out a job analysis exercise in order to generate detailed information about the tasks, the skills, and the requirements of the job. This information can now form the basis of your job description and personnel specification. There are several ways of doing the job analysis. I have here observation of someone working on the role, interview of the current job holder, questionnaire, work diaries, and so forth and so on. What I've done in several organizations that I've worked in, when I just joined, I will ask the employees to be writing what they are doing every day, the tasks, the activities they do every day. I will ask the managers or supervisors to ask their employees to be jotting down what they do every day. So at the end of 2 or 3 months, we gather those information and we're able to sieve it and find out the activities, the tasks on the job. From there, we can develop our job description. You can do it. Or secondly, if you don't want to go through that process, you can also get job description online, but try to customize it to fit your organization. The job description is critical element of the process. So if you get this wrong, you may fail in hiring. But if you get this right, you will end up getting the right person for the job. What are the contents of the job description? 1, it should contain the main purpose of the job. This is an overview of the role. It's like the summary. This summary can be in 1 sentence, if possible. They have the main tasks of the job. The main tasks of the job. You should describe this in active verb. Don't use vague languages. You can now also expand on these main tasks of the job. Thus, you now have the scope of the job. This is a list of duty that the person will perform. And it's an indication of the responsibility and the accountability on the role. Make it smart. Make it smart. In the chat box, can somebody write the full meaning of smart? Yes, okay, can somebody just say it out? Because I'm not seeing the chat box, I don't know why.
Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound.
Yes, so you have to make your job description outcome-based. You want to know whether that person has achieved whatever you want that person to achieve. So it has to be outcome-based. It has to be smart. The job description provides the basis for drawing up the personnel specification, and the personnel specification is a profile of the skills. That's competencies required to do the job. It could be essential or desirable. So let's look at the content of the personnel specification. The personnel specification is the skill, aptitude, knowledge, qualities, and experience actually needed to do the job well. Can somebody give us 1 word for that, for skills, aptitude, knowledge, qualities, and experience? Let's see whether we've been listening. Can somebody say 1 word for that? Yes, anybody? 1 word for skills, aptitude, knowledge, experience. We're all HR gurus. Okay, that is competencies. So you should ensure that you draft the person specification for all jobs and review it periodically. The criteria that the personnel specification should contain should be ability-based. It must be able to identify the necessary skills and qualities the ideal candidate should have. It should be measurable. It should be observable and demonstrable to enable the assessment of candidates. We have a variety of assessment methods that we can use in our selection, including interviews, tests, assessment centers, role plays, and so forth and so on. The method used by an organization depends on the role to be filled. the skills of the interviewer, and the budget for the recruitment. But whatever method we are going to use, ensure that it is an objective measure, objective means of selection. The criteria needed for the person specification could either be essential, which is a must-have, or desirable, which you can now use in case the person has met all the essential criteria. Let's move on. The person specification continued. The personnel specification should be relevant. It must specifically relate to the requirements of the job as laid down in the job description. It must be non-discriminatory. We must be aware of unlawful discriminatory criteria in our personnel specification, and we must be able to justify whatever criteria we have in the person specification. Now, moving on. Okay, the scorecard. Some companies, they use the scorecard. The scorecard is a blueprint that describes success on the role. It's an outcome-based job description. So when you hear scorecard, don't be afraid. You can develop it. It's just to make your job description outcome-based. You call it scorecard. The scorecard has 3 parts. The mission, which is just like the purpose of the role in the job description. The outcomes, that's what you want the person to achieve on the role. Then the competencies. We have said it in the person specification and job description. It's only that some companies call it scorecard. So don't be afraid when you hear the name scorecard. But again, review the scorecard for every job vacancy you are trying to do. Okay, let's move on. Now we have advertising. You have to advertise after you've gotten the scorecard, which means you have known the criteria you want to use for your selection. So you have to advertise. You advertise widely using a variety of media. But in advertisement, ensure that you avoid discriminatory language. We don't want anybody to take us to either the industrial court. Here it is not rampant, but abroad it is rampant. So don't use any discriminatory language so that people will not say you are discriminatory in your hiring. Also exercise caution on photographs. I have seen many advertisements, even in our platform, either they put a woman or a man. It seems as if you are looking for that type of candidate that is depicted in the advertisement. No, we don't want to show any type of discrimination, any type of bias. So we have to ensure that if we are putting a picture there, we put 2 pictures, the 2 sexes, male and female, so that nobody feels discriminated against. Again, it's also good practice to add an equal opportunity statement. It's good practice also to add a welcoming statement. If you have a particular group that is underrepresented in your workforce, say women are underrepresented, you can add this welcoming statement, welcoming the group that is underrepresented in your organization. If you check through any adverts by any international organization like the UN, the UNICEF, the ILO, you will see this equal opportunity statement and also welcome statement. So it is best practice. We can emulate it. I'm moving on. Now, how do you find the people you hire? There are several sources. We are all into hiring. So in the chat box, we can be writing the sources we use. But here I have, you can advertise in your company website, you can use referrals, you can use job boards or other platforms. You can use social media, recruitment agency, headhunters, and so forth. You can write others that you have been using. But I want to say something about the social media, a thought about social media and hiring. There is no legislation restricting employers from using or from viewing the social media of any candidate. However, there are a number of potential issues. Most candidates have won in tribunal because they were not given jobs due to the fact that their social media pages were looked upon. So I would recommend that we don't look at the social media pages of candidates like their TikTok or their Facebook. However, we can go to their LinkedIn profile because LinkedIn is a professional platform. And most candidates also put their LinkedIn profile. So if you have been invited by the candidate to go to their profile, you can go there. But when you are going there, ensure that you notify the candidate that you are viewing their LinkedIn profile so that you will not be accused of breach of data protection regulation. So I'm progressing. The application process. Okay, we have to use a structured application form for all recruitments. The application form should only contain questions which are relevant to the post being recruited for. We are looking for an objective. We've been talking of objectivity, standardization, structured. We are looking for an objective, structured, standardized information that will enable us make our assessments about the candidates. The shortlisting should take place based on the criteria we have established. As I said it before, you must have a criteria upfront. So now when you are shortlisting, you have to base it on the criteria you have established. Application forms should be reviewed periodically to ensure that they are fit for purpose. Any document we are using for our recruitment purposes, we should always ensure that we review it to bring it up to date. So let's continue. Okay, shortlisting. Yes, this is a very crucial aspect of hiring. This is where we are gathering the data to ensure that we bring the right people into our organization. Now, there are some principles that we must follow. The shortlisting panel or the selection panel should comprise of at least 3 people. And those people should be of different genders and from different community background. Let it not be only female, female, or male, male. Try to mix it. And don't put only people from the same background, maybe Igbo, Igbo, or Yoruba, Yoruba. We want to avoid any type of bias in our selection. So we have at least 3 people. Then we ensure that they have mixture of sexes and also from different community backgrounds. Then we should ensure that the selection panel has been given appropriate training. We said it before that you cannot give what you don't have. So they should be trained to be in this recruitment and selection. The job criteria should be from the scorecard, whatever you want to call it, or from the job description or person specification. The purpose of the shortlisting now is to select candidates for assessment that meet this job criteria. So our selection, as we said, has to be objective. We have the criteria we want to use for selection. Now, we are selecting candidates that meet this criteria. I've said it earlier, I'm just trying to re-emphasize. So let's progress. Okay, shortlisting continue. The criteria to assess candidates, again, should be before the shortlisting. You should have decided whatever criteria you're using before the shortlisting. So upfront, describe it. Decide whatever criteria you are using. Okay. Ensure that you score candidates fairly and consistently against this criteria. We've been talking of structured way, no bias. Be objective, be fair in your scoring. Then your decision should be based on evidence. Do not put any prejudice, any type of bias. Use evidence in any decision you're trying to make, and ensure that you'll be able to demonstrate how your shortlisting decision is based on objectivity. You must have to establish a standardized system for recording all shortlisting activities. Standardization means that we will not put in our prejudices or our biases. So we are consistent. We are consistent in our selection decisions. This will help ensure that the recruitment exercise was fair, objective, and consistent. So that's what we are looking for in our recruitment, so that we hire right. So we should ensure standardization, which will lead to objectivity and consistency in our hiring. Let's progress. Okay. Selection methods. Selection methods. We have a variety of selection methods that we can use in our hiring. But the type to choose depends on the job being recruited for. As I said before, the job being recruited for, the skill of the interviewer, and the budget for the role. But whatever type you're using, ensure that it is relevant, it is reliable, and it will provide a valid assessment of the candidate's ability to perform on the job. As always, ensure that you review your selection processes periodically to make them fit for purpose. Okay, most selection process will involve an interview of some sort. The form can vary greatly, but always ensure that it is structured and designed to assess the candidate against the desired criteria. We'll come to this explanation of that furthermore. Okay, there are various ways, various selection methods. For example, we have the time-limited completion task. Here, you are giving a candidate a test and giving them a specified time to see how that candidate can work under pressure. Recently, in my organization, we are trying to hire for the customer service department. We gave them tests and we timed the test. So we are trying to see whether they will be able to perform well on that test, because that test is also what they will be doing on the job. So you can use this the time-limited task completion test. You can also, there are type of tests that don't entail the normal question and answers, like if you may want to test a person's communication skill, you can give that person presentation. The presentation could be on a topic that you give the person suddenly to prepare on the day of the interview, or you can ask them to prepare a topic and present. For all senior roles in my organization, you must make presentations. Then, if you are coming in as a trainer, you also have to make presentations. So you can use presentations for your interview. You can also use psychometric tests. Psychometric tests are an objective exercise that can take the form of general aptitude tests. You are trying to test things like their numerical skills, their reasoning skills and decision making, and also personality assessment, which provides an image of the candidate's personality traits and attitudes. For senior roles in my organization, you must have to do a psychometric test, mostly personality assessment. So all senior managers, we give them personality assessment. So we use all these combinations, but depending on the role to be filled and also the budget. So you can find out the best combination that will work for your organization and start implementing it. So let's progress. Okay. The panel, I think the principle, the panel should have a mixture of sexes. We have said that before. The shortlisted panel should be the same thing as the selection panel, so that it will be easy for them, since they have already known the criteria, that there should be a mixture of sexes and community background. This interview should be conducted in a structured and systematic way. We have been re-emphasizing that. So this will enable us to remove all forms of bias. The panel should meet well in advance. So in advance to decide on the selection criteria, then they should give weighting to every criteria. If you say leadership is one of the criteria, what weight is leadership going to have? If you say motivation, what way? So you meet beforehand, you give weightings to all the criteria. And the criteria should come from the job description or scorecard. You should draft relevant questions that you will ask. And this should also come from the job criteria. You will now have a standardized system of scoring that you will consistently use throughout the interview to avoid allegation of bias, and give all applicants the same opportunity to demonstrate their ability by asking the same question. So you have to use structured interviews. We will come to structured interviews. The interview should take place in the same environment. If you are doing virtual interview, ensure that everybody pass through the virtual interview. If it is in office, ensure that everybody pass through the in office. If you are doing the two, maybe after people have finished the virtual, they come to it, but ensure that there is consistency in the environment you are using, so that nobody will claim that he or she was discriminated against. Okay, the interview, we'll continue with that. Each application should be fairly assessed in accordance with the same agreed selection criteria. We have said that before. All scores on the assessment should be recorded, and decision taking should be based on merits. During the interview, be listening carefully, be listening attentively. Be listening carefully to the evidence presented by the candidate, so that you'll be able to properly assess that candidate against the relevant criteria. Be careful to avoid any type of bias that we've been talking about, any type of stereotype, any type of discriminatory assumption, or any form of bias. Be careful to avoid it. Again, it is important to be self-aware. As an interviewer, you should be self-aware to recognize whether you are being consistent in your approach. That is why we have pointed out that it's good for interviewers to be trained on interviewing skills, so that they will be self-aware. They will know what they want to look for. Ensure that your non-verbal communication, example, your eye contact, your gestures, your postures, they are not distracting to the interview, because that can cause them, it can affect their performance. So ensure that you are not overdoing anything. You don't maybe or any type of gesture should be moderate. Modesty is key. I'm moving on. So, what is an interview? What is an interview? We've all been in an interview, either as an interviewee or as an interviewer. So, what is an interview? Can someone rise on the chat box what he or she thinks an interview is. Oluyemi, are you seeing the chat box? Dr. Oluyemi? Hello? Hello? Hey. Hello? Hello?
We can hear you, ma'am.
Okay. So can somebody define what an interview is for us? Anybody?
They can't unmute, ma'am, until the question and answer time.
Okay, so can they write it on the chat box? So if you are seeing the chat box, let me read whatever they are writing.
Someone says conversation between an interviewer and interviewee to obtain information.
Okay,
Another
thank you very
person says an interviewer is a formal discussion used to achieve a goal. Ibrahim says gathering information from each other.
Okay, yes, that's very good. That's what an interview actually is. But we have to now find out that it's not a one-way street. It's a two-way street. The interviewer, as an interviewer, you're trying to determine some things. As an interviewee, you're also trying to determine some things. As an interviewer, you're trying to see, can the candidate do the job? Will this candidate fit our culture? Is this the best person for the position? And some other things. Then, as an interviewee, you're also trying to determine, is this the organization that I can succeed in? Is this an environment I can fit in? And several other things. On the chat box, we can write things that we have been looking for, either as an interviewer or as an interviewee. Okay, let me proceed. Okay. Preparing for the interview. Yes, interviewing is a very crucial part of hiring. So you have to prepare. You have to prepare in advance. This is what I call doing your homework, doing your groundwork. But in order to prepare, let's see what we can do to prepare well. So ensure that you get all your tools ready. Ensure that you have your tools around. Ensure that your generator or your NEPA is constant. Your internet connection is stable. You can do a test run before the time. Then ensure that you have a notebook and a pen in order to be able to take down some points. Learn about the candidate beforehand. This is good practice. You have to study the CV of the candidate prior to the interview. It's not when it is time for the interview, just bring the CV and use 1 or 2 minutes to glance through. You will not be able to get good points from that. Then plan a structure for your interview. Yes, have a structure so that you don't miss anything. So that you ask all candidates the question you wish to ask. You will not say, I forgot to ask this person this question. We're talking of consistency here. So the structure will help you to be consistent. So you're able to ask candidates the questions you want to ask. And for you to have a structure, have a checklist so that you will know the questions you have asked and the ones you have not asked. The checklist would enable you to ensure that you follow your structure consistently. It's also good practice to send to candidates complete details of the interview. The job description, the person specification of scorecard, and the person that they will be speaking with. Is good practice to do that. Let's move on. Yes, continuing on the preparation. Avoid all sorts of distractions. I have seen interviewers, when they're interviewing candidates, they are still texting messages, they are still sending emails. Remember, we are talking about the candidate experience here. So avoid every type of distraction. Focus on the interview. The interview is what you have come to do. You are trying to bring in the people that will move the organization forward, so you cannot do it in a lackadaisical way. It has to be done. You have to ensure that you avoid distraction. Now, if you are doing a virtual interview, maybe you are in your house, tell your significant others that you are going to be interviewing from this time to this time, that you will not want any interruption, any distraction. Then if you are doing it in your office, inform your colleagues beforehand that they shouldn't come in. It's not when you have started an interview, somebody just comes to your office and, sorry, I didn't know you are having an interview. The candidates will not feel honored. So we are talking about the holistic candidate experience. So we should try to avoid distractions. Then note taking is good. You try to take notes so that you have, evidence of what you are, to collect the data. But whilst you are taking notes, still demonstrate to the candidate that you are still listening. Because as I said earlier, the candidate experience is crucial. So ensure that you are listening to them, though you are also taking notes. Then you have to follow up. You have to follow up. Do not allow candidates to be hanging at any point of the interview. Let them know the stage they are. Let them know the next step. So that's good practice. I'm moving on. Okay, we have two types of interviews. We have the unstructured interviews and we have the structured interviews. The unstructured interview has a loose framework. It has discretionary content. Candidates may be asked different types of questions. There is no standardized rating scales. The interviewers do not need to agree any acceptable answers beforehand. So this can lead to allegations of bias because it's not structured. And this is not what we want. So we have to use a structured interview. So in these structured interviews, all candidates are asked the same question in the same order. All candidates are evaluated using the same structured rating. The interviewer agrees upfront of the acceptable answers. This is consistent. This is consistent and it reduces legal risk. So structured interview is better. Now, we have two types of structured interviews. In the chat box, can somebody write the two types of structured interviews? Let's see. The structured interviews, we have two types. Can someone write the two types of structured interview on the chat box? Doctor, if they write it, you can help me read it out because I don't know, I'm not seeing the chat box. Has anyone written it? Should I move ahead or should I wait for their comments on the chat box? Okay, in order not to waste so much time, let me move ahead. We have two types, the situational and the behavioral. First, the situational focuses on the future. Questions about the candidate will do if faced with a hypothetical job situation in the future. Here, the interviewer asks the candidate to describe how they would handle the specific situation that may occur during the course of the job. The interviewer wants to know how the candidate will react in real-life situations and whether the candidate have the necessary skills to handle this situation effectively. The interviewer may give the candidate a scenario. Let's say you are working on a project and one of your team members is not pulling his weight. What will you do? So here we are using the what, the why, and the how. Maybe what will you do? Why will you do that? So you are trying to get a feel of how the candidate will perform on the job. It is hypothetical, but it is also structured. So let's see the behavioral. The behavioral interview asks about past behavior that the candidate did actually do on their job that may likely occur in the current job they are coming to do. This approach to structured interview assumes that the best predictor of future performance is past performance on similar circumstances. In this approach, the interviewer can ask the candidate about their experience with tasks similar to those of the job which they are coming to apply. For example, you are trying to hire somebody that you want that person to be establishing clients' contacts. So you may ask the person a question like this. Tell me about the most difficult client contact you have made in the last 6 months or in the last 3 months. When the candidate answers, you might now ask the person, what was the obstacle you faced? What did you say when you were stormed? What did you do to overcome this difficulty? So here you also use the what and the why and the how. These two forms of interview, the situational and the behavioral research have shown that they are effective in hiring candidates. So I'm proceeding. Yes, we have several types of questioning. We have the open question, we have the probing question, we have the closed question, we have the multiple question, we have the leading question. But I'm going to go through each and every one of these one after the other. First, the open and probing question. These are recommended type of questioning. In the open question, this encourages interviewers to talk, to give information, analyze the information in their own words. Here we use the who, why, how type of questioning. Then it is very effective in helping establish rapport, explore opinion, and also feeling and attitude. So it is highly recommended that we use open questioning. Then we can also use probing question. Here you are trying to dig deeper into the candidate, into the surface, the first answer that the person has given. You are trying to ask further, to get a broader responses from the candidate. It is useful in encouraging the candidate to expatiate more or to concentrate on some specific points. So it is recommended that we use open and probing questions in our interviews. Then we have type of questioning that we may use. The closed question. We may use the closed question, but you have to be careful when using the closed question. The closed question is just a yes or no type of answer. You can ask somebody, okay, in this role, were you paid on commission? So that's a yes or no. But you're just trying to get confirmation of a basic fact. Or if a candidate is talking too much, you can use a closed question to control that candidate. But try to be careful, use it sparingly. Then the questions to avoid are the multiple question and the leading question. The multiple question can cause confusion, and it will be difficult to follow if too many questions are asked of an interviewee at once. For instance, you now ask somebody, can you describe a problem you faced in the past? Tell me about what you did to solve it. And if there is anything you would have done differently. The candidate will not be able to, assimilate the questions at once. So the candidate will be lost in trying to answer that question. And you, even as the interviewer, will not be able to track down the responses. So we should avoid multiple questions. Then leading questions also should be avoided because it's compelling the candidate to say what the interviewer wants to hear. So it will not enable us to get the data, the information that we need for the interview. Like this question, don't you think that the customer is always right? The candidate will just say yes, is always right. So you are just leading the candidate to reveal what you want to hear, not the candidate to say what he knows about the issue at hand. So we should avoid the leading question. Also, we should avoid legal trouble. We don't want allegation of any type of discrimination or bias. Most of us that are practicing abroad. Don't ask questions about a candidate's marital status, about a candidate's children, about the candidate's personal circumstances, disability, age, or religious or political opinion. These are no, because we don't want to lead our organization into legal problems. So we should avoid this type of questions. So I'm progressing. Okay, the completion of the interview form. What I have here is what should be in the interview form. You may also improve on it. One, the candidate identification number and name, the time the candidate came in and the time the candidate left, the personal mark for each individual criterion. We said you have to establish criteria. So what mark did you give that person? What mark the other panel member gave them? Then the comment as evidence of the mark you are given. So you have to write the comment. Why did you give that person that mark? Then the panel's agreement, then the signature and date. Please ensure that you don't write anything in the application form that may cause embarrassment to your organization. We don't want to be accused of any discrimination. So let's continue with the completion of the interview form. There are things you can consider here. The panel complete the assessment form individually and then discuss their results for each candidate with each other panel member. They now decide who to appoint, either by adding all the panel members' score together to reach a final cumulative score, or they take an average of the scores of each candidate. So they now decide who they want to appoint. But the method to be used, they should have agreed on that before the selection started. So let's progress. Okay, let's look at our decision-making of who the candidate to assess. For us to make our decision about the final candidate we are going to hire, first of all, you have to find out whether the candidate researched the organization. Is the person actually interested in the organization? What does the person know about your competitors? What does the person know about your industry? You have to find out whether the person wants a job in your organization or a career. You also have to determine when the person arrived. Interview is very crucial. It's a very important event. If the person takes it seriously, the person will not arrive late. So you want to find out when the person arrived. Then, how did the person treat your front office staff and or other people that the person met? Was the person courteous or was the person, aggressive? You have to find out those. Then how did the person dress? I have said it, an interview is an important occasion. Did the person dress anyhow? Knowing fully well that you're coming for an interview, then you have to find out Did the person talk negatively about his or her former employer? You know that that person may be reporting to you, that person is coming to be maybe part of your team. If that person has backmouthed his or her former employer, you know that that person will also backmouth you. So you have to find out how did the person describe his or her former employer? Did the person ask you any question? And what type of question did the person ask, if the person did ask? Then be sure to eliminate all the biases we have been talking about, all the stereotypes. No similar to me bias, no first impression bias, no overconfirmation or overconfidence or reconfirmation bias, no halo or horn effects. So we must now select the best person, the strongest candidate, and follow through with that candidate to the end of the hiring process. So finally, we have the appointment, the job offer. This is the most important aspect of the hiring. We have started from the beginning. Now we have come to making the offer. This aspect is crucial. So we must have to ensure that the person we are selecting is based on merit and ability. And we have followed a fair, objective, and recruitment and selection process. As I said earlier, we have to ensure that the person we are bringing into our organization will help us increase efficiency, effectiveness, productivity, and ultimate profitability of the organization. So we should be able to produce evidence of the decision we made and be confident that we followed a fair and non-discriminatory procedure. Once we have decided on the candidate to appoint, we should inform all other candidates. As we said, feedback is key. So once you have decided on the candidate to appoint, we inform other candidates of our decisions. Then inform the selected candidate of other things that are necessary, whether the offer of employment is subject to completion of medicals and reference check, and you now make arrangements for them to complete those. Now, let's move to some other potential issues. Other potential issues that we have to look into are, one, references. Every offer of employment should be subject to satisfactory references being received. However, we shouldn't ask references from the employee's current employer, except we have gotten a written consent from that employee. As I said before, we don't want to fall foul of the data protection regulation. So if you want to ask the current employer of that employee of reference, tell the employee that you are going to take reference from his current employer. Then the referee, we have to provide the referee with a guidance, a structured guidance of the job that that person is coming to do. So we can send an outcome-based job description so that when they are giving reference, they will be able to know what they are referring. Okay, second, we have verification of qualification. Yes, I remember, I think our colleague, Deji, the consultant, the owner of, I think, Swiss Consult, he talked about several things that happen in verification of qualification. So it's key for us to verify qualification. Some people coming into organization, they don't have the qualification they are planning to have. I think I even saw something in our charts this week where somebody came in, the person maybe have only WAEC, but the person is the person as somebody that has a degree. So we have to verify the qualification of somebody we're employing. You may give a provisional or conditional employment. So the confirmation may be subject to satisfactory verification of that person's qualification. Then finally on this slide, I have medical. The law permits us to take medical from any candidate we are hiring. However, this is a sensitive personal data of a candidate. So it's best practice to only take medicals of people that have given maybe an appointment letter before you now take medical. Now, finally, I have the holistic candidate experience. We shouldn't forget the holistic candidate experience. Once we have made a decision, say that we are going with Jack or we are going with Johnson on this position, we should follow through. We should ensure that the person gets the offer letter, ensure that the person's orientation and body comes on smoothly. We should also ensure that the person is given the proper training and given all tools and resources that will help that person to be successful in the job. So from the first time the person steps into the organization, we must have to ensure that the candidate experience is top-notch. Then for people that did not make it, we now have to also inform them, give them feedback. And by way of conclusion, yes, here I have hiring mistakes are the #1 problem for any organization in the 21st century. On average, managers make hiring mistakes 50% of the time, and each mistake costs about 15 times the person's annual salary. So the solution to our #1 problem is to use science in our interviewing process. Use structured interviews. Remove any form of bias. Now, there is nothing more important than for us to hire the rock star that will enable us build the rocket ships that we want our organization to be. The best athletes in our team. Hiring rights will help us get the best people to the organization. We can do this by, 1, setting a high bar for talent and never, ever compromise. 2, documenting exactly what you want the person to accomplish on the role using a blueprint or a scorecard. 3, generating a wide flow of the right candidates. 4, using a well-structured interview process. 5, training managers on how to hire and also ensure that they practice to improve their skills. Giving candidates reason to join the organization. And finally, keeping the candidate experience top-notch throughout the process. This will ensure that our hiring decisions increase the overall efficiency, effectiveness, productivity, and profitability of our organization, and therefore improving our hiring success rate to above that 50% norm. Remember I said that research by Peter Drucker said that managers make hiring mistakes 50% of the time. So if we follow this structured process that I've enumerated, we'll be able to improve our hiring to above this 50%. You can do that. We can do it. Yes, we can. You can improve your ability to hire the right person and enjoy your career more. I'm going to close with this. Imagine how it will feel for you and the managers if you have a winning team all pulling together to drive the organization forward. It is spectacular what happens when we have the right people on the road. These best practices will help us get there. We can all do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Coach Sarah. This is a real masterclass, comprehensive lecture, well delivered. Ladies and gentlemen, let us appreciate her, the quality of the presentation, the quality of her slide. This has been massive. Thank you, everyone, for your patience and understanding. Anyone who goes through this, we can say you are a certified recruiter. If someone says, who certified, you say Coach Sarah and HR mentorship. Ladies and gentlemen,
Sure.
we would like to take some questions and some comments, contributions. Maybe you want to share experience or you want to ask a question. If you raise your hands, we'll just unmute you so that you can speak. I would like to do that quickly so that in the next 6 minutes or less, we can be out of here. Okay, I already see Sylvia. I see Sylvia. You can unmute. Any other person, please raise your hands quickly. Sylvia, please unmute.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, Sam. Thank you. This is really an insightful presentation. Thank you. You really done justice. I've learned a whole lot on this topic. So my question is around how do you manage an employee? Because you mentioned that before we're able to take medicals, we should have given out the offer letter or an appointment first. However, what if the candidate does not meet the medical criteria for that job that he or she is supposed to work on? For example, maybe the person is asthmatic and the location of that job is not going to be conducive for him or her. How do you manage that situation? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. There is no cast in stone approach to medical. Some organizations do the medical even before they give you the employment letter. Some do the medical while you are there. I remember when I joined the civil service then, we've already joined before we are asked to do medical. But if you follow that approach, if you didn't pass the medical, you will not be confirmed. I also remember a friend sharing with me about what happened to somebody that applied to Guinness. The person has been given the offer letter, and the person has resigned in his former organization. Incidentally, when that person wanted to resign, the organization told him, no, don't resign. We are going to improve your condition of service. We're going to increase your salary and all this, but the person now resigned. When he was now asked to do medicals in Guinness, unfortunately, he was found to have tuberculosis. And you know, tuberculosis is a contagious disease. So they now canceled the appointment. Now the person was like on the middle of the road. The former employer refused to take him, and the new company said no, that tuberculosis is a contagious disease, they can't take him. But we have to try and see how to marry it. The best practice should have been to ensure that the person does the medical before joining. So if you can do that, better. But if you can't, when the person have joined, you send the person to medicals. As you said, your example is asthma. Even the person with asthma may not be comfortable working in that environment anyway. So, doctor, do you have anything to add to that?
Ma, I think your response is robust and comprehensive enough.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other question?
We have another question here from Promise Ajoku. Promise, you can unmute, please.
Okay. Thank you so much for this session. Highly interesting. The question is, what are the most important types carried out on candidate before off? Thank you.
I didn't hear you.
It's asking for the most important tests to be carried out, medical tests on candidates. the most important types of medical tests to be carried out on candidates.
Okay, thank you very much. Most important medical test. It depends. Like the most important is just most times you do a chest, you do, okay, like in ours, we do the X-ray of our whole body, your heart, the X-ray of everything, then some other tests that the doctor passed through that I cannot remember very well. But now let me assume the person is coming for maybe catering. Normally in my former organization, the person must go for, I think there's somewhere we take that person in Yaba. Doctor, where you have your, this thing, somewhere there, they will go for some test. I've forgotten what you call that test, but they do the, okay, yes, to find out whether they have cough or all those things. Then for somebody for customer care, we normally send them for tests here to ensure that they don't already have already have ear problem. So test, we are not trying to use it to stigmatize anybody. We are trying to use that test to ensure that that person did not carry any type of sickness into the organization and now claim that he got it from the organization. So you can check the best test for your organization and do it. What are you into? Let me know. Promise, Njoko, what are you into?
I think he has dropped off. Yes.
Okay. So
the key thing is what is the job function? Yeah. I know, Coach. Yes. I said a key thing is that there's not one type of test for all roles.
Yes.
Medical tests are role specific. For example, yes, maybe somebody that will be carrying something heavy. The test may be different from somebody that will be sitting on the chair in a sedentary style. So you need to profile the different jobs that you do and then have categories of tests for them. For example, maybe in catering, food handlers test. If you are not in catering, you don't need that test. Maybe if you'll be in the airline, they may have some specific tests for people, maybe because of the cabin crew pressure, cabin pressure, and the like. So it's sometimes industry specific, role specific. So, but the best thing is before you start administering tests, you may need to talk to a general physician and explain the kind of roles you do, and then they will recommend minimum tests. Otherwise, if you just go and meet some of them that you want to, they will just give you 15 tests so that they can collect your money, whether it is useful or not useful. And somebody puts in the chat, and I love that, for example, for drivers, you must do eye tests.
Eye tests, yes.
You must do eye tests. And you may
for
not
drivers,
necessarily...
For pilots.
Yeah.
For drivers, for pilots, you must do eye tests. For police officers, you must do physical fitness tests. So it depends on the role. So it's not a one-size-fits-all test. But it's also best practice to maybe have the chest of the person, an X-ray of the chest of the person. Okay, any other question?
So I don't think we have any other question, but I'm just scanning through. I'm scanning through. No other question. Okay, yeah. So ladies and gentlemen, we have gotten to that point where we unmute and we express our appreciation via voice to our facilitator. Please, you can unmute and please say thank you for this wonderful
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you,
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you,
Very detailed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, man.
Thank you, man.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you for the session. We appreciate the time you took to educate us about the recruitment process and all that. God bless you, man. Good night. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you, Mr. Oluyemi.